The following is for informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice.
Now let's find out if you are eligible for any of the exemptions that are available under the FSMA Produce Safety and Preventive Controls for Human Food Rules. If you determined that your produce or foods are not covered under the Produce Safety Rule or the Preventive Controls Rule, this video does not apply to you. First, what is an exemption? An exemption means you do not have to comply with all parts of the rule. You only have to comply with certain parts of the rule called modified requirements. Exemptions are generally based on the size of your operation, your intended buyer, or how the product will be used once it gets into the marketplace. You will need to find out what the modified requirements are. Okay, let's begin again with the Produce Safety Rule. If you have determined that at least some of your produce crops are covered under this rule, now you can find out whether you qualify for any exemptions. We'll walk you through each step in the flowchart to see what exemptions might be available. If you are unsure at any point as we move through this video, stop and go back to review it. The first determination to make is whether or not your produce is intended for further processing that destroys pathogens. For instance, blanching vegetables in hot water before freezing, or thermal processing in cans or jars are processing methods that can reduce the number of harmful microorganisms to safe levels. So, for example, although tomatoes or carrots that you grow may be covered under the Produce Safety Rule, if you sell them to a commercial freezing or canning operation, you are eligible for a processing exemption under the Produce Safety Rule for these specific crops. If your produce will not go through further processing to destroy pathogens, that is, you know that it will be sold to consumers in its fresh form, then you won't be eligible for the processing exemption. But you may still be eligible for what the FDA calls a qualified exemption. So, now you need to determine whether your average annual total food sales are either less than $500,000 or at least $500,000. Here, total food sales includes the value of all the food your business produces, not just your produce sales. So produce, plus any other food crops, like grains intended for making bread, milk from your dairy herd, or even the value of animals raised on your farm that are intended for human food. If your total annual food sales are $500,000 or more, then you are not eligible for a qualified exemption and you must comply with all requirements in the Produce Safety Rule. However, if you chose my average annual total food sales are less than $500,000, you still have a chance to get this exemption. The decisions that follow are related to who you sell your produce to. First, you need to decide how much of your food sales are direct to consumers. Examples of direct sales to consumers are when you sell your produce at your farm stand, a farmer's market, through a CSA program, or over the internet. Are more than 50% of your average annual food sales directly to consumers? If so, then your farm business is eligible for the qualified exemption. If this isn't the case, and 50% or less of your food sales are direct to consumer, keep going. There are a few more decisions you need to go over. If 50% or less of your food sales are made directly to individual restaurants or grocery stores who prepare or sell it to consumers at that site, that would mean that the majority of your sales are to grocery chain warehouses, brokers, distributors, fresh processing facilities, or other types of businesses where your produce will be resold to other businesses. If this is the case, you are not eligible for a qualified exemption and you must meet the full requirements of the Produce Safety Rule. But if more than half your food sales are made directly to restaurants or retail food establishments, and not to a distributor who resells to another business, there is another way you might be eligible for a qualified exemption. If you fall into this category, there is one more requirement you need to meet to get the qualified exemption. The restaurants or retail food establishments you sold the food to must be in the same state as your farm, or no more than 275 miles away. This was written in the law by Congress with the goal of giving local foods a break. If that is your situation, then you are eligible for a qualified exemption. If your food sales are to out-of-state buyers that are more than 275 miles from your farm, then you are not eligible for the qualified exemption, and you must comply with all requirements within the produce safety rule. Now we switch directions to the preventive controls rule. If you decided earlier that you are covered under the Preventive Controls for Human Food rule, we can move on to find possible exemptions. If your business is a farm where commercial food processing activities also occur, then start on this side of the chart and go through the decisions. We'll go over possible exemptions for non-farm processing activities a little bit later. So, if you process foods on your farm, you need to decide whether all of your processed food products are on the FDA's list of low-risk products. Those considered low risk are the only farm processing activities you can do and still be eligible for what the FDA calls a mixed-type facility exemption. So, what does the FDA consider to be low risk? Low-risk processing activities include making jams and jellies, syrups and honeys, grains, oils, vinegars, baked goods, and other products that do not require refrigeration to keep them safe to eat. Many small-scale processors add vinegar or other acids to foods to pickle them. However, pickled products are not on the low-risk list. If, from this list of activities, you decide that you process at least some items that are not considered to be low risk on your farm, then you are not eligible for the mixed-type facility exemption. But you may still qualify for the qualified facility exemption. To find out if you qualify for the qualified facility exemption, you will need to go through the decisions on the other side of this chart. We'll come back to that in just a bit. If you decided that all of my processed food products are low risk, then you may be eligible for the mixed-type facility exemption, but only if you meet certain business size requirements. If you have less than 500 full-time employees on your farm, or your average annual food sales plus the value of your inventory is less than $1 million, then you are eligible for the mixed-type facility exemption. Recall that to get your annual total food sales, you want to take the average of all your food sales over the previous 3 years, including things like produce, grains, dairy, and meats. And don't forget to add the value of your inventory. But what if you have at least 500 full-time employees and your annual food sales plus the value of your inventory are at least $1 million? Then you are not eligible for the mixed-type facility exemption under the Preventive Controls rule. So, if you either manufacture processed foods on property that is not a farm, or you do your processing activities on your farm but were not eligible for the mixed-type exemption, now we can check to see if you are eligible for a qualified facility exemption. We only need to answer one question to find out. Are your average annual food sales plus the value of your inventory at least $1 million? If this is true, then you are not eligible for a qualified facility exemption. But if your average annual food sales plus inventory are less than $1 million, then you are eligible for a qualified facility exemption. It's that simple. That was a lot of information. Again, go back and review it now if you need to. Proving eligibility for qualified exemptions under either rule requires 3 years of sales records to support your claim for the exemption. You should begin collecting sales records now to prepare you for your claim once your compliant date occurs. Keep in mind that the FDA can remove your exemption if they find you are growing produce or making processed food products under unsafe conditions. As you can see, the requirements for obtaining an exemption are complex. If you are still not sure where you stand, we recommend going to the Penn State FSMA website to find an expert who can help you.